On this week's Talk of Him, we talk about doing the dishes and vacuuming for God and what we can learn from the flowers and how they trust God.
Right, and we'll also talk about how things can dramatically change in our lives when we begin to see ourselves and others as God sees them. Coming up.
Hello and welcome to Talk of Him. We're so grateful that you have joined us this week. Hi, John.
Hi, Ganel-Lyn.
How you doing?
Good. How's your arm?
It's still here. It's healing. I have a metal plate and 5 screws in there that are
Holding it all together.
And I will just say thank you for asking that if I had been born in a different time, I've been told that I, may not be here still. And for sure, my arm would not be here.
You're like, oh, that looks broken. Let's just get rid of it.
Yeah, it was 52 broken bones is no joke. Yeah. So, thank you for asking. Yeah. I'm grateful to be here. The conversation today, Matthew 6 and 7 today.
Yeah,
we're going to
love
talk
it.
about.
I'm excited for this conversation.
So, we're going to continue. Last week, we started with the Sermon on the Mount. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot there. So, we're going to keep going with a little bit of that flavor. But first and foremost, I have a little... on Facebook, it's called Stewardship Support Group from readers of my stewardship principle. And someone posed a question the other day about just feeling frustrated about everything they're trying to do to take care of their family and no one's really appreciative.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you ever felt underappreciated in your marriage or your family?
Yeah.
Never.
So I made this comment that goes kind of in line with what I'd like to talk about in Matthew 6 today. And this is kind of just setting the stage for it. And my answer to this person was, yes, it does feel discouraging at times where you're trying to do something that you feel like is going to have a reward. You're trying to take care of your family. You're trying to cook them dinner. You're trying to pay the bills. You're trying to whatever the things are. And there's not this like great reward for your efforts.
Right.
And whether it's dealing with maybe a difficult boss or a child that's struggling with a learning disability, or you're studying for hours and you still get a failing grade, there's so many things that we feel like at times, why are we doing this? Because we're doing it and the outcome, which I talk a lot about in the Stewardship Principle book, the outcome focused always like discourages me. When I'm in offering focus, which is a little bit of what Matthew 6 talks about, then I can reframe whatever I'm doing. And so the comment I made to this person is, could you do the dishes for Jesus tonight?
I love it. Love the reframe.
And really, over the last few weeks with healing and recuperating and rehab and all of this with my arm, the simplest things that have felt discouraging, I've tried to say, like, I'm opening this can for Jesus. I'm taking the dog out for Jesus. And when we reframe whatever we're doing, whatever our offering is, and we do it out of love for God, whether it's the dishes, sometimes only heaven does see what we're doing.
Yeah. I love this headspace to be in when you're we know scripturally that when we do an act for others, we're doing that act for Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so my wife, Sarah, will sometimes be like, are you just like getting resentful over there doing the dishes? Sometimes I am, because I'm human, but I don't want to be. And so when I'm aware, I'm like, wait, stop.
Do the dishes for Jesus.
If you're feeling resentful, just stop. Mm-hmm. Do it as an offering. I just love how you say, do the dishes for Jesus.
Do the dishes
I've always just sort of reframed it like, this is a service opportunity.
Yeah.
Do you want a service opportunity? Yes, I do. Well, then be quiet, do the dishes. But I love do the dishes for Jesus, vacuum for Jesus, do the laundry for Jesus.
Everything. Yeah. And you know what? I do this show for Jesus. Yeah. I mean, in reality, within a week of falling and having surgery, our amazing producer, Shar, was like, are you sure we shouldn't cancel and not have you do it? And I just told her, I'm like, this is not my show. This is God's show. Like, if I show up in pajamas and I'm crying in pain and there's no makeup on, I mean, I paid someone to curl the hair. So don't think that somehow I did something magical. Like, someone helped me get here. But I knew being here to do the show, because this show isn't mine. This is God's show. Yeah. And that leads exactly into what I think verses 4 and 28 in Matthew 6 teach. That thine alms may be in secret, and thy Father which seeth it in secret himself shall reward thee openly. And he does. He rewards us when we do dishes for him because first and foremost, sometimes we don't go to resentment, right? If we're vacuuming for him, maybe no one recognizes that and then they walk with dirty shoes on the carpet after you just did it. But if the whole time you were vacuuming out of love for him, there's a reward in that because you bond with God. You feel his love through that.
I love that. It's a bonding.
Yeah.
It's a private bonding. That
It's a
is
private
so
bonding.
rewarding.
Yeah. And then verse 28, consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And I just think it's that surrender of outcome that a flower is not stressing like I do about the to-do list and the plan and the goals and the spreadsheets, right?
Yeah.
The lilies of the field are like, I know who my maker is. I know who created me. I am in total surrender and trust. One of my words for 2023 is trust. One of them is beauty. I probably should have been warned that if you choose trust for one of your words, you may fall and shatter your arm. And then you get to learn to trust a lot. But I just think that the lilies of the field teach us so much about not being in that hustle, that nervous energy.
The anxiety.
Yeah, the toiling and the spinning. The Sermon on the Mount, has so many beautiful principles and themes. But I think one of those ideas that we can just pull this week, it has so many applications of doing things kind of in private, knowing that God's going to reward it. And I share this in the Find Him, we share this in the Find Him study guide, but President Uchtdorf said, God's greatest reward goes to those who serve without expectation of reward. It goes to those who serve without fanfare. Those who quietly go about seeking ways to help others. Those who minister to others simply because they love God and God's children. And I
think you're thinking of some specific people right now.
Rob, shout out to Rob for being so patient.
Yeah.
But
Rob Condie's a saint.
He is a saint. And trying to juggle his full-time job and take care of me. But I'm thinking of our neighbors that have driven me to places because they couldn't drive, and cute Sadie, who's my backyard neighbor. She's in kindergarten. She drew me the most beautiful little heart. Like, I love you so much, Ganel-Lyn. And she yells over the fence all the time when I open the door. And those little acts of service, they're not going to cure cancer or whatever. But I've been the recipient of so many quiet acts of service. And I just think, as Jesus teaches, consider the lilies of the field and how they grow, how they toil and neither do they spin. God cares for the lilies of the field and he cares for us. And so much of what we do, if we offer it out of love and celebrate that as an offering, if we stay in that mindset, I think our efforts can feel worthwhile. And at times, maybe the outcome doesn't simply feel like it equals the effort we're putting in. But I just think, what kind of rose are we? And I think that's an important question. Like, this verse is the lilies. I happen to really love peonies and roses. And I think there's some diversity in our efforts. Sometimes we're like, well, look at my neighbor. They're running these 3 businesses and they've got 8 kids and and you're over here dealing with special needs child or a learning disability or depression and anxiety. And so, like, consider the lilies of the field, but realize the diversity of flowers that are out there. And so what it takes for a rose to bloom versus what a lily has to go through. God sees our individuality in our effort and our offering, not like all mothers should be doing and all fathers should be doing and all men should be this way. And I think there's power in maybe understanding this week that idea of God's got his eye on us. He knows what the flowers are doing. He surely knows what you're wrestling with. Yeah. So those are my thoughts.
What flower would you be?
What flower would you be?
I'm stuck on that. I'm thinking.
Do you have a variety of flowers to pick from?
I think I would be a dandelion.
You were not.
Yes, I would be.
Wait, what's Georgia's state flower?
Really?
Oh, sorry.
Do you think I would have any way of knowing that?
I don't know.
Georgia's state flower?
Hey, I just feel like you're the expert of all things Georgia.
I do love Georgia.
I know. This is why I set you up. I didn't ask you like Arkansas.
Does the state have a state flower?
Yes.
What's Utah's state flower?
I don't know.
See,
what is? I know
think
California poppy.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe you know.
What's Utah's? I don't know.
I love being in the Sermon on the Mount, and we said, I think it was last week or the week before, that every verse can be a sermon. I love what you focused on there. I love any verse that will allude to or directly reference this sort of what we call from Alma 41 in restoration theology, the law of restoration. Or as it's explained in section 88, it says that whatever we send out in part will return to us in full.
We talked last week about
interesting.
the praise thing, right? What we praise,
good.
it returns.
That's a great example of sort of this restorative reality, right? This cosmic compensation that happens that we've all experienced to one degree or another daily. So Matthew 6, let's think about this. You know, what I send out comes back to me, this principle, as it relates to these next two verses. Matthew 6, 14 and 15. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. Verse 15. But if you forgive not men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Now, I want to be super clear on something here. And we've talked about this before, I think last season, about God's forgiveness. God is not holding a grudge, withholding his forgiveness and love until we forgive others. I think a more accurate sort of rendering of these verses would be something like, if you want to experience the reality of your own forgiveness, that God is always freely giving whenever you turn to him, if you want to experience that, you've got to forgive others.
So you're saying like you can't even relate to it if you haven't experienced it.
If I'm holding a grudge against someone else and just holding them to the fire all the time, metaphorically speaking, because of things they've done,
we're likely
there's just no way I'm going to experience fully the forgiveness that God is freely offering all the time to me.
You probably won't even be in that mindset.
Right, exactly. And so a quick shout out maybe to a program you and I have both been a part of. You've been a part of it, I think, like 5 million times. I've been a part of it.
That is literally not an accurate
I've been a part of it once. It's a place that we recommend you going to and watching some great episodes on Our Turtle House Firesides. Both Ganel-Lyn and I have been on and participated. I've only done it once, and it was about this forgiveness. And we'll put the link we'll put the link maybe to this in the show notes of Our Turtle House Firesides. I was on it with two great guests, Becky Hennessy and Brad Hull, and we each talked about a different facet of the process of forgiving others. And I just love the connection. I loved especially what Becky and Brad said, and so I would just recommend that to everybody's viewing and consideration. But before we experience the reality of God's forgiveness, we have to somehow get into a place of love and charity. I think Christ gives us a key in Matthew 7, continuing in the Sermon on the Mount. He says this, judge not so that you won't be judged. Again, just sort of this restorative, beautiful reality. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. Or with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. So it's just like, if you're stingy with your forgiveness, you're going to have a hard time feeling forgiven yourself.
Hurt people will hurt people.
Absolutely. Why beholdest thou the mote or the sliver that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam or the log that's in your own eye? How will you say to your brother, hey, let me pull out that sliver in your eye when you've got a log in your own? I just think it's kind of a comical. Maybe people were laughing at that point because it does seem kind of like a hyperbolic comedic moment maybe. Where Jesus
but
is like,
honestly, how would you reach for something if you do have something big?
It's just so funny, right?
Yeah.
You can't. Thou hypocrite, Jesus says in verse 5 of chapter 7, first cast out the beam or the log out of your own eye, then you'll be able to see clearly to cast out the mote from thy brother's eye. One truth I take from this that helps me get into a space of forgiveness is that everyone in this parable or this little analogy has their vision obscured to one degree or another. All of us do. I've got slivers, I've got a log in my eye, whatever the case is. We're all, try to take something out of someone's eye if you got a sliver in your eye. You know what I mean? I've had a sliver in my eye. I don't know if you have. It's horrible. Yeah. I had to go to the doctor, an eye doctor, and get a steroid drop. It hurt my
you literally did.
Yeah, it hurt my eye really badly. And so I would not be able to focus to get something out of another person's eye with this cedar, the wood was cedar, sliver in my eye.
Cedar slivers are hardcore.
It was horrible.
They're not little.
Yeah. So to be mortal is to have an obscured view. And the more obscure our view is of others, the harder it is for us to stay in a place of forgiveness. So we all need to visit the cosmic and universal eye doctor, Jesus Christ, so that we can see clearly.
Well, and I think the idea of like, I am a current bifocal wearer.
Yes.
And I remember finally like leaping into the land of bifocals. And the power of that is this kind of duality.
Right.
Where I can see far off, but then I can read.
Yeah.
And it's annoying.
It is annoying. I was just doing this because I know that.
But I also have felt like, in some eternal perspective, that's the beauty of God and his omniscience, is that like simultaneously he's meeting us right where we are at in the immediate, the close up, the thing that we're so myopically focused on, right?
Like
and he's also like gently, lovingly like keeping the eternal perspective.
Yeah.
And
Far.
yeah.
Close.
And I think that for me is in my mortality, I'm not always seamless between that. I get really myopic, either, oh no, what's going to happen 50 years from now? Or what is like distracting me right here, right now?
Yeah, and Christ helps us see it all clearly.
Yeah.
Couple of money quotes to finish off. How about that?
Shout out
to Sister Michelle Craig.
We are super fans.
We are super fans.
She's been on this show and she always has an invitation to
I
come
work
back.
with Michelle's sister, Catherine, and she's amazing.
Yep.
But I just want Sister Craig to know that every time I am like looking for related quotes or teachings, I'll plug in phrases that come to my mind. I'm like, someone had to have said this. I'll plug it in.
It's
Sister Craig. I'm like, what in the world? We're just plugged into the same frequency or something. And
she's so great.
I love you.
She's so great.
Here's something I came across that she said recently in 2020. She said, understanding how God sees us prepares the way to help us see others as he does. Jesus Christ sees people deeply. He sees individuals, their needs, and who they can become. Where others saw fishermen, sinners, or publicans, Jesus saw disciples. Where others saw a man possessed by devils, Jesus looked past the outward distress, acknowledged the man, and healed him. Even in our busy lives, we can follow the example of Jesus and see individuals, their needs, their faith, their struggle, and who they can become.
That is money.
I know I've said this before, but my wife Sarah and I are frequently say, if you just knew everyone's story, their backstory, I'm not sure we'd have any judgment. We just have compassion and sympathy.
It's true.
No matter the hurt they've caused us, doesn't mean that the hurt isn't real. I don't mean to dismiss any of that, you know what I mean? But it's just like, that's how you get into a place of empathy. Finally, Sister Jean B. Bingham of the General Relief Society said this, and I just love this part. The day will come when we will have a complete understanding of others' hearts and will be grateful to have mercy extended to us, just as we extend charitable thoughts and words to others during this life. So I hope that after all of us strive to visit the cosmic, universal eye doctor, Jesus Christ, we'll first see ourselves clearly, faults and all, and see that he still loves us. And then in that space, we can turn to others and see their faults and extend to them the same mercy and same gratitude.
What a great thought. You
ready for our invitation?
Yeah, let's do it.
Our invitation this week comes back to something we started the show with. We want you to try this week to treat everything you're doing as an offering for God. Washing the dishes, paying the bills, vacuuming. Do the dishes for Jesus. Vacuum for Jesus. Serve others for Jesus. And in private, receive that reward. We hope you'll take some time to maybe journal about your experience with that. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we hope you'll join us next week on Talk of Him. Did you like today's episode of Talk of Him?
Then like and subscribe.
And find us on social media.